three people, and everybody else is just general interest.
In the future.
In the future, okay, it doesn't really matter. It's just, I wanted to know how much do you already know about these tests? Like, do you have any strategy in your mind? How will you approach the test? What are you going to do? How do you prepare for the test? So, what is your tactic?
To get prepared, I practice all the sections, and I think it's important to learn a lot about the structure of the text, about the spelling, how it's spelled.
So, and you?
Well, I've downloaded plenty of past papers, I've downloaded all available of them, and I installed them, and now I'm working on some high-level past papers.
Actually, of course, there are lots of tactics, different strategies, and so on and so on. And I will not tell you how to study the language, because you probably already know, and you probably have a good command of English already. But I will tell you about things that you have to think about, to pay attention to, in order to achieve better result. I mean, your test mark, the test result, will be a combination of what you know about English language, about a combination of your level of English and your understanding of the test process. So if you understand what's going on, you are getting to have better mark. If you are clueless about what's going on, if you don't understand what is the requirement, what they want from you right now, you probably score less. So I will try to talk about what they expect from you in the test and what things to look at in order to prepare this. But we will start with a little bit of classification. So we have lots of tests for English, and Wikipedia page lists about 15, but the most popular in Russia, at least, are those. There are tests administered by Cambridge, which is like, abbreviation is ESOL, I don't remember, School of Languages, I don't remember. And these are CPE, CAE, FCE, and so on and so on. Those are of lower level, and you probably are not interested in them, and probably are interested in these ones. Then there is TOEFL. Test of English as foreign language, probably the most popular among Russian English learners. And there is IELTS, International English Language Testing System, which is worldwide the most popular testing system, but in Russia, because it's more expensive, it's a little bit less popular than TOEFL. And IELTS is a product of joint forces by Cambridge University and British Council and some Australian government, I guess. So it is more popular in Britain and in other English-speaking countries except US. And TOEFL is administered by an American firm, which is called ETS. And so that's why TOEFL is more popular among American universities. And Cambridge tests are also popular in Europe because they're actually CPE is the oldest in the world. It was introduced in 1913, more than 100 years ago. And in 1913 there were only 3 candidates for this test, and all of them failed. It was really complex. It took 12 hours, and it included tasks of translating from French and German into English, and from English back to French and German, then phonetics and English literature. So you could imagine it was really, really complex. So nobody passed. But after some time, they kind of simplified it, and right now it's much more easier to do. But again, back to classification. So all these tests are different, but we can divide them in several groups. So, for example, in tests like TOEFL and IELTS, you will get a score. It means you will get a number, a figure that will reflect your language abilities. So for TOEFL now you can get a score from 0 to 120. And for IELTS you can get a score from 0 to 9. So for IELTS, 0 means you didn't take the test. 1 means you took the test but showed no English language ability. And from 2 to 9 with 0.5 increments. This is a scale for you for your language abilities, ranging from like 2 is like really beginner, and 9 is like almost native. And for TOEFL as well. So TOEFL has 4 parts, and for each part you can get a score from 0 to 30. So combined score would be from 0 to 190. But for those tests, these tests are a little bit different. So you have to decide, they have different levels. So you have to decide which level you are going to take. And depending on your result, you either get the certificate or not get the certificate. So you have to think about, like, you have to think what is your level, what is probably your level. Because if you go to a test which is really difficult, you won't get a certificate, and probably it would be just a waste of money. But if you take a test which is too simple, you probably will get the certificate, but this certificate probably won't be as useful as a more advanced certificate. So you have to decide. And there are actually lots of different language tests available in the world, and you can just classify them in this system. So, like, there are tests of French, for example. That correspond to the same system. Like DELF is Diplôme d'études de la langue française, which means like diploma of French language studies, and DALF is Diplôme approfondi de la langue française, which means like a diploma of advanced language studies. So these are easier tests, and these are more difficult. And the same system is applied in China for HSK, which stands for Hanyu-Schriftensprachig, which means a standard test in Chinese. And like in Spanish, for example, if Vadim would be here, he would probably relate to you on difficulties of DELE, which is Diploma de Español como lengua extranjera, or something like this, so Diploma of Spanish as a language. So, speaking of my experience, I have taken TOEFL many years ago, like probably 2004 or 2005, and I didn't really get a good mark, so it was not really useful for me. Then I took IELTS, and I took CP, and I took DALF. This is my experience. So, as for results, oh, like, okay, no, the results don't really matter. I can just tell you what is it. How does it feel? So, and speaking about different levels. So, in 80s or 90s, Council of Europe introduced this level-based system of several levels of your language abilities. And we probably have met this classification many times before. But according to this classification, which is called CEFR, which stands for Common European Framework of Reference. So this is a classification of language abilities. So generally, the language abilities are divided in 3 groups: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And inside each group we have 2 sub-levels: A1, A2, B1, B2, and C1, C2. And those levels are usually called beginner, elementary, intermediate, upper intermediate. Advanced. Proficient.
And great intermediate.
In this official classification, there is no term pre-intermediate. So if you, it just probably it means something like elementary.
A2 plus, 7 plus.
Some people like to divide those groups even smaller, like A2.1,
Yeah.
A2.2, just to collect more money from the students. So you have to take a class for A2.1, then you have to take a class for A2.2, and so on. There is a general understanding of how many hours of instruction you need to reach this level, but I don't remember these figures. You can go to Wikipedia and check for yourself. But usually it's about 1,200 hours of instruction for C2 and about maybe 400 hours of instruction for B1. Maybe, I don't remember. But it's just, and for different languages it's different. So, like French language is considered to be a little bit more difficult to learn for foreigners, so they require a bit more, and so on and so on. But it doesn't really matter, because you don't really measure how much time you spend learning, you just want to get a certificate. So you can get a certificate even when you didn't have all these hours of instruction, but if you're a good student, for example, if you are really good at languages. So it's just a number. Okay, so CPE test is a C2 level test, so it's the most difficult. CAE, a Certificate of Proficiency in English. CAE stands for Certificate of Advanced English. It's C1 level. FC is First Certificate in English. It's B2 level, and so on. And there are exams for B1 and A2, which are really, really easy. It's usually for children.
What is the use of these certificates?
In some European universities, you can take either TOEFL, IELTS, or these exams. So
They're not very popular.
they're not that popular because of this different system. So you have to think beforehand what is your level. Because if you just if you know that you need TOEFL results, you go and take the TOEFL test, and you look at this score and you see like, are you going to the university or not? Because every university has different requirements. But if like Oxford University says like, we need CPE grade B, for example, at least, or CPE grade A, because in every test they have several grades, A, B, C.
And it's difficult to convert the results of one test.
Yeah, exactly. So they kind of intentionally made it like this. So you don't really convert TOEFL grade, TOEFL score to Cambridge exams and back, and TOEFL score to IELTS score and back. By the way, IELTS has two variants, general module and academic module, which are practically the same.
No, they are slightly different.
Reading parts and writing parts use different subjects. I mean, in
Speaking
reading,
also.
what?
Speaking also.
No, it's the same.
It is the same, but
They say that it
they
is the
still
same.
wait more.
It is not official, because officially they say that the difference is in writing and reading. So in academic module they give you scientific papers, graphs and diagrams, and you have to write about what you see in those diagrams. In general module they use like everyday activities, and in reading as well. And they say that the results from academic module are not compatible with results of general module. So if you get like 8 on academic, it doesn't mean that you will get 8 on general, and vice versa. So this was about classification. So probably you know that every language test generally assesses just 4 language skills, which are, can you tell me?
Grammar, listening, writing,
Reading.
speaking.
Listening,
Grammar, use of English.
then listening, in Cambridge exams, there is also a test for use of English.
And what does that mean?
Use of English, yes. It's basically grammar and structures. So I have,
Also collocations.
yes, so just how proficient you are in using the matter of the language itself. So I have brought past examination papers for the year 2008 of CPE, and you can take a look. For example, like I took the test in 2009, so it was the previous year. So the exam is 5 parts, so the use of English part number 3. It's called papers, so it's called it. Use of English. So for example, these are the tasks for this use of English part. For example, for questions from 1 to 15, read the text below and think of the word which best fits each space. So there are spaces in the text, and you have to fill those spaces with words. In the text is, for example, like this. Choosing the right book to give as a gift is rarely an easy process. It requires matching an intimate knowledge of a book with an intimate knowledge of another person's psyche. Wonder that we too often give on the task and settle instead an obvious impersonal choice like a recent literally award-winning novel. Something like this. So the structure of the test is the same for all the levels, and the difference between the levels is just difficulty of the text and the level of grammar you are required to show. Or for example, for questions from 26 to 31, think of one word only, which can be used appropriately in all 3 sentences. For example, shall we a time and place for the next meeting? Can I you a sandwich or something? You need the right wing mirror on your car before it comes loose.
Are there any options?
No, you just have to think and feel.
What is the right answer?
What?
What is the right answer?
For this exactly? No. I wasn't thinking of right answers. They have in this book they have the answers, I guess, somewhere in the back. But it's just a practice material. I mean, it's not given you to check your level. It's just given to you to familiarize yourself with the structure of the test. But of course, you could like think what is the right answer here. But it's not the point of my presentation today. I'm not giving you the answers for this. And also I have brought IELTS practice tests. Again, this is a book. On the market you can find lots of books for preparation. I will talk a little bit later. So you can take a look at this book as well. So the next point is the skills that are going to be tested. So when you pass, and these skills are tested usually in this order. So for example, in IELTS, first part is listening, then you go to reading, then you go to writing, and speaking can be the last part on the same day or taken on the other day, depending on the testing center. And and use of English is like number 3, between reading and writing. And the most important thing is that you have to familiarize yourself with the test structure. So in any given moment, every minute, you will understand what is going on and what they want from you. Because time is always limited. For example, in listening part here, which lasts 40 minutes, you listen to every piece only once. You don't have time to listen for it again, and you don't even have time to think a lot, because they just press the button on the CD, and it's like 40 minutes long recording. They don't stop it, they don't run it again. So all the pauses are already in the recording, and like in the recording they say you will have 30 seconds to write the answer for this question. After 30 seconds they give you the next question and they don't repeat. And you have to understand like how many questions there are going to be in the test, what are the pauses between questions, what are you expected to do in every time. And for example, in IELTS, in listening, you write your thoughts in one piece of paper, and then you have to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. And there is no additional time for this. You have to use the time that is in these 40 minutes. So you have to manage your time really wisely. So, for example, when doing listening part, you have to understand, are you allowed to take notes? In many tests, it is allowed to take notes during listening part. And use those notes then afterwards when filling the answer sheet. And how many times you're going to listen to every piece. Like in CPE, for example, in several parts of listening, you are going to listen only once for many pieces. In IELTS, I guess, I don't remember, but you can look it up. Several pieces are going to be repeated, and some pieces are not going to be repeated. And it should not be an unexpected thing for you. You have to know that first two questions are going to be repeated, and all the rest is not going to be repeated. Then, going to reading. What is important? You have to learn how to skim and scan the text. What do you know? Do you know what it means, skimming and scanning?
Yeah.
So
To
again,
read quickly.
yes, skimming is to read really quickly, and scanning is looking for specific parts of information. Because the time is always limited again, and usually it is not enough to read the texts from the beginning to the end. And in reading, you are, like in IELTS again, in reading, you will have questions to the text, about the texts. And in those questions you will have to answer, does text contain the information about this and this and so on and so on. And these questions are usually posed in a way when you have three options: yes, no, or there is no information. Which is really strange for Russians, because we are like used to having just two choices, yes or no. And you have to be really careful, because when the text doesn't say anything about the problem, it is not a no answer, it doesn't say anything. And you have to distinguish between no and there is no information. And you have to distinguish between facts and opinions, because sometimes they ask about what is the opinion the person has about this problem, and you have to look for opinion in the text. This is about it. And for example, again in CPE and in IELTS, you have, in the end of reading section, you have to write a summary. So you read a long text or several texts, and you have to write a summary. Again, you have to learn beforehand how long this summary should be and how many points you have to reflect on in this summary. For example, the test preparation books, they usually give you the idea. Like in CPE, in the summary, it should be 70 words long and maximum 2 points. So you have, like, they give you two texts, you have to summarize all the information from the two texts and put it in your own 70 words. But this is kind of information you take from the text preparation guide. And I'm just telling you that this is something you should think about before taking the test. So reading, listening, writing. For me, writing was the most difficult part in TOEFL. So when I took my TOEFL, there was a separate score for writing, and it was ranging from 1 to 6, and I got 4, which was not enough for me. And it was because I didn't really prepare myself for writing part, so I just wrote a composition. So they give you a topic, and I just tried to use my imagination, what I could say about this topic, and just wrote a short composition, a short essay, which was not the right thing to do, because in writing tasks they again require you to show several important skills, like that you have to show that you can put English texts like in order. You have to show that you can link ideas appropriately, and you can use wide range of vocabulary. So my text was not coherent, probably. I remember the topic was, imagine that there is a new department store just opened in your neighborhood. What are the best, what are the good and bad things about it? So I had to reflect on this topic for, I think, 20 words, or 2,200 words. But probably my essay was not good enough. So I prepared myself extensively in writing, and when I took CPE, the writing was my best part. So I was expecting that speaking would be my best part, for example, but my best part was writing. So it means that you can actually train yourself and increase your skills without really, doing something extraordinary. So I just bought some books, like in case for CPE, I didn't even buy anything. I pirated, downloaded a book for, it was called something like Objective CPE or something. And I just was reading through it and following its advice. So writing, coherence, range of vocabulary, and another important point is genre. So for example, in CPE and CAE, they will ask you to write a piece of specific genre, which means, like for example, you probably have them in the test papers. You have to write a letter, so it has to have the signs of formal letters, like address, like introduction and conclusion, like letters have. Or you have to write an article, or an essay, or a report. Yeah, and there is a difference between article and report, and you have to learn what is the difference because on the day of the test, you just can have a task of any of them. So you have to familiarize yourself with the genres. And again, speaking. In speaking, in TOEFL, for example, there are several questions for speaking. Some of them are independent and some of them are integrated, which means on independent task, you just talk. And on integrated task, you read, you listen to, and then you talk. And you have, again, to learn what is expected from you, how much time you are allowed to take to prepare, and for how long you are going to speak. And again, you can take some notes in several cases. Like in IELTS, for example, you are allowed to take notes when you prepare for speaking part.
Was it hard for you to concentrate during the speaking part?
As long as I understand what's going on, it's not that difficult to concentrate. Because when I took IELTS, I knew that there were going to be a short introductory part in speaking when they just ask you general questions. What is your name? Where are you from?
What for? Just to warm you up?
No, it's just to learn how to react to familiar questions. Then there is
If you understand English at all.
yeah, then there is a long term. It's called long term. They give you a card with a topic and several lines of text that support this topic. And you have 1 minute to think about what you're going to talk. And then you talk for 2 minutes, I guess. And during these 2 minutes, they just listen. They don't interrupt. And you have to talk for 2 minutes, not more, not less. And after these 2 minutes, they start asking questions that are related to the topic of your long term.
So they are people.
Yeah, in my case, it was only one person. And on my IELTS test, my question was, think about something that you have lost. And tell us about your experiences.
So what?
Yeah. So when I just looked at this card, like I said, oh my god, I have 1 minute and I have lost so many things in my life. Which one do I choose?
Do you have any time to prepare for speaking?
1 minute?
1 minute. In IELTS, for example, it is 1 minute. So for 1 minute, you look at the card, write some notes, just very quick notes, and then you have 2 minutes to
In
talk.
TOEFL it's 15 seconds.
But on CPE you don't have.
I don't remember. I don't remember how it is on CP. Yeah, and I decided to use some funny approach. So I decided to speak about how I lost my belief in Santa Claus. So I started I haven't lost so many substantial things in my life, but I have lost one thing that I can talk about. I have lost my belief in Santa. And it really produced like my examiner was starting to laugh. And it generally warmed the atmosphere because I started feeling a little bit more at ease. And I remember my speaking was at least good in the audience.
What score you remember? Yes, more for speaking.
For speaking, no, I don't remember the speaking part. So, what's next? How to prepare? Again, I have already told you about something, and I just want to reiterate that you have to understand the structure of the test. Every test has special structure, but this information is available. So you can buy preparation books, you can buy past papers, or you can just find them on the internet, download and learn how the test is structured. And you have to understand the requirements in which, in every part of the test, what they ask from you. Because, for example, in writing, you have to understand what they ask and write strictly to the topic. Because if you do something else, probably you write a good essay, but if you were required to write an article, you're not doing the right job. So understand the requirements and understand the structure. And be prepared that something will be totally new for you. I mean, there will be words that you don't understand. There will be, again, situations that you don't really hear what they are talking about. Or they are talking too fast, or there is too much noise. Or so there are always going to be situations when you fail. So don't be afraid and don't panic, which is really, really important part of succeeding in the test. Never panic. Even though at some point during the test you may feel like I don't understand what's going on. What should I do? What's it all about? Where is the bathroom? And so on. Speaking about bathroom, sometimes you are not allowed to go out for bathroom or allowed to go during some specific parts. For example,
diapers for adults.
Diapers.
they don't provide diapers, but they say like,
Really wrong.
but if you leave right now, they're like your test is forfeited. So you are allowed to leave only during some specific parts.
And actually, may I say from my experience, when I passed IELTS twice, and the most difficult part for me is listening when they told something, and you start to think about it, and sometimes I concentrate on remembering of what it was told, and I forgot to listen to what is going on now. So and it was already lost.
And it's stressful. It's really stressful when you lose the line of thought, so to say.
Yeah.
You think about what was 2 seconds ago, and then you don't understand what they are speaking about right now. So probably like okay.
I didn't want to interrupt.
So like yeah, if you lose your understanding, you just skip this question, but then on the next question you do it.
Speaking about genres, I wanted to mention another thing. Once I took part in a German Olympiad, and the last task, speaking task, was to tell a story. And I told them something like a description. So I told them about a girl sitting in a chair, looking out of the window, something like that. And another girl composed a story about, perhaps about a boy who went outside, who did something, then did something again, and so on. So there was some action in her story. And then she got like two or three more points than me, and she won. So I asked her like why, what I did wrong, and they told me that the genre was wrong. So I was supposed to write a story, not an essay, not a description of a girl sitting in a chair. So we were equal, and they then wrote about some actions. So it was really important.
So you didn't pay attention to this fact.
No,
And so you did something
yeah.
else. Yeah.
My story is something written, I don't know, I didn't think of it.
Any other questions? not right now. Okay. So, and the next point, time management. As I said, time management is really important. You will understand how much time is allowed for every part, and they will say that you have 1 hour, for example, for writing part, but you have 2 tasks. Like task 1 is more easy and task 2 is more difficult. So you have to think that 20 minutes is to write the first task and 40 minutes is to write the second task, and then count the words, because again you have to write not so much less and not so much more than the limit they ask about. And for example, in IELTS you have to put some time to transfer your answers on the answer sheet. So probably, like in listening part, you have answered all the questions, but when there is no time for you to transfer the answers on the answer sheet, it means that you have failed these questions. Then, again, when you practice, you can practice these skills separately. So there is no point in practicing English language in general. You can select, like today I'm working on my reading skills, and next time I will work on my writing skills and speaking skills and so on. So when I was, for example, when I was preparing for Belfast French, again I downloaded a book like How to Succeed in DALF, and it was giving me really good information on how the test is going to be structured. And in the examples, they asked me to just try to talk to somebody to imitate the speaking session. So I asked that, and we tried to speak to each other. And it really helped. So at least I could understand how much time it takes me to express the ideas. Like because in DALF, for example, in the speaking part, you have to speak for 10 minutes. And then you will have to discuss what you have
Already forgotten.
But they give you a lot of time to prepare, like 1 hour to prepare, and then 10 minutes to speak. They give you several papers, like a newspaper, like articles, just text. You have to summarize the data from these texts. You have to add your own opinion, and then you just give a spoken, they call it kind of recitation. So you just recite this information in like you give a speech on this topic. Like, and this speech should be 10 minutes long, and then you discuss.
That's really difficult.
I was afraid. I was terrified by the by the prospect of speaking in French for 10 minutes and then I'm discussing it. But it turned out that it was not so bad. Like, my question was, like, it was really highly philosophical question about happiness in your life. And I managed to relate happiness to health, like mental health and physical health, and the sensation of happiness. And then I cited some WHO data on mental health, and it turned out to be that I could make it go on for like 10 minutes.
You turned it into a medical question. Where you could just compare.
Yeah, probably it is. Sometimes it could be helpful if you can add your own experience or your own opinion. But you should be careful, because if you divert too much from the original topic, it could be like less points for you. So you have to stay. You have, at least if you have some points to recite, you have to stick to those points. Like when you are required to summarize the information in the documents, you still have to give this information when you speak. But again, if you don't panic, it's easier to do, because panic just destroys the mental process. But if you panic, your results will be lower. So again, I'm not talking about how to learn the language better, but I'm talking again how to get the score that you deserve. Because all this panic, all these unexpected things, they just take out from your score something that otherwise would be in it. So probably that's it. I have no more points to discuss. So
one point about the speaking part. You should not plan your answer in advance, because the examiner will recognize that you've learned this before and you just speak it.
It's difficult to make it like because you don't know the topics beforehand.
There was another point, like another minus in my German Olympiad. They told me afterwards that they heard that I used some phrases learned in advance.
Just
They heard it.
So you really tried to learn something in advance, or no?
Uh,
Was it really that you tried to use some?
my level was really low, but it was a German Olympiad for A2 level. And I only could use some texts I learned in advance.
So it sounded not natural. Like
Yeah,
your
so-
general level didn't correspond to the texts you were citing.
I usually learn languages in this way, so I learn some texts by part, and then I can take parts, passages from this text and use them in my natural speech, and it gets more and more natural with the time. But they heard that the process were incomplete. Was incomplete. Was somewhere in the middle, reciting text.
Okay.
One more question. How does IELTS score correspond to ABC?
To this?
Yes.
Oh, they give this rough idea. I don't remember exactly, of course, but they say, for example, that score of 6.5 in IELTS is something like B1, B2. Maybe.
No,
Or-
BBC one.
Yeah, B2, C1.
Really?
C1.
Really?
Yeah. It's about the line.
6.5?
6.5.
C1?
So it's just a general idea, because usually the usual requirement for people who apply for the universities is IELTS 7. So 7 is not that big. It feels like so it's like a little bit more than the border between B2 and C1. Usually C1 is already an advanced level. It means that you can speak and you understand like very abstract concepts, but you still lack some skill that doesn't really move you to really abstract level. But can you tell us what is your IELTS score?
7, but in general, with some parts were
Of course, it never feels like you know everything. And when you take the test, you feel awful.
The most awful part for me was speaking. Actually, because for the first 3 parts, it was more like I was really concentrated and I can use the full capacity of all my concentration. And after all this, I was just and it was, I was really exhausted, and it was 3 hours between before the speaking part, and I was really tired, and just before speaking I was feeling really awful.
It was the same day.
It was the same day.
Okay.
That is why it was really like bad for me.
Any other?
By the way, you cannot pass the TOEFL in Chelyabinsk anymore. They
Yes.
recently closed the center.
We used to have this.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about speaking. Does your speech should have like a structure, beginning, the ending? Should it be formal, informal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how
It depends on the test, but usually no. Usually they just ask you questions. Like in IELTS, it begins with just series of short questions. Like what is your name? Where are you from? What is your profession? Who are your parents? So on. It's really short. Then they give you the card, and you have to talk for a longer time, and then discussion. So there is no requirement to say dear listeners or something like this.
But you have to use some drinking words,
Of course, it should sound natural. So if you just say phrases that are not naturally linked to to each other, you will sound awkward, and of course, you'll get you less points. So you have to use all these linking devices, and your speech has to be smooth and so on. But again, in IELTS, they just will give you a score. So even though you probably don't speak really fast or make lots of mistakes, your score just will be lower. But in CPE or in CAE, if the score is really low, they just don't get you a certificate. Anything else? Have you taken a look at this book? Anybody's going to take the IELTS, by the way, because this is just about IELTS. No. Yeah, you want to take IELTS.
Not very soon, probably.
So, any other questions? Anything to share with me? Your scores, your experience.
What was your score in
8.5.
Wow.
I guess it's I was amazed because I was thinking about maybe 8. But and as I said, my best part was writing. So I was hoping that my best part was speaking.
What is the difference between reading and use of English?
In CPE, use of English, they just want to understand your level of grammar. So you know how to use the words in different contexts. You understand what's the small differences in meaning, and just not writing per se. So you're not writing the whole paragraph of text, just filling the gaps. And by filling these gaps, they try to understand, do you understand grammar, do you understand how words can be linked with each other, and so on.
And in the reading part, you should complete the text.
It could be different, if you have taken a look at the test papers, there are different questions. For example, sometimes you have to, there is a big text, and there are several paragraphs taken out of it and mixed. And you have to put every paragraph back in the place which belongs. And there is one paragraph that you will not use, which doesn't belong sometimes. Yeah.
Do you think these tests are good? I mean, don't they limit people's mind or estimate you in a proper way? How to say that?
Nothing limits your mind.
Not necessarily. I don't know how to say. I mean that you have a structure and you should go along with it.
I don't think this is a limiting factor, because you have some reason to take this test, yes? Like you want to use this result or something, and you have to do your best to get the result. So understanding the structure will give you a better result compared to not understanding the structure. So this is just a way to improve your result. I mean, to get closer to your real score, because if you don't understand what's going on, your score will be lower than your actual knowledge of English. Of course, the test is kind of, it's not a real life, of course. So in real life, you might have wonderful experience talking with foreigners, I don't know, having no problems, but in test, having not so good result, or vice versa. So probably it's not a real life, but still it's the best possible way to, best way that we have.
I heard that Chinese people are really good at taking the IELTS test because they just train a lot.
I would like to add that preparation for this test doesn't circumscribe you somehow, doesn't restrict your abilities. Moreover, it improves your skills and so on. While you're striving for achieving this goal, for instance, you're going to take a singing skill. You inevitably get level C, level B2.
Yes, of course, when you just train, it's not only familiarizing yourself with the text, it's also just increasing your level, because you read in English, you try to do something, it just makes you better at English. Of course, it's in this way, it improves your result, but again, this is what you want to achieve anyway.
Another point is that they need some criteria to measure our skills. So if it was absolutely free, I mean, if it didn't have any form, it would be perhaps unfair. Like, how can you measure a person's skills if you don't have any criteria, any structure? Like, he's good, he's bad, like, how to measure it?
You could read about, like, in the beginning, CPE, like in 1913, it was really non-structured. So they had no limits on how long your essay should be, on how long, like, for how long you should talk in the speaking part, for example.
That's why everyone was failing.
I don't know, maybe it was just too difficult, but they had really little structure. But now it's more standardized. Of course, to put everybody in the same position. So you have 40 minutes for this, 1 hour for this.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Actually, there is a mathematical model behind the test. So there is a thing that is called eigenresponse theory. Eigenresponse theory, which is behind all those multiple choice testing. And in language tests, and especially in Cambridge ones, they are modeled after Nash model, which is a kind of generalized linear model that is behind the logic in the tests. So if you're really interested in maths, in statistics, you could read a little bit more about this mathematical model and how it connects the things you write on the test, like the variance you choose from the test, with your potential abilities, with your true abilities. So it's actually an interesting point, but I guess it's a little bit out of the limits for today's discussion. For example, an interesting point might be that in TOEFL, in those parts where you just answer the multiple choice tests, in TOEFL they employ computer adaptive testing, which means that computer decides what is the next question depending on how well you did the previous question. It means that if you have a certain level and the questions are easier and more difficult, so it starts at probably medium difficulty. If you do it right, then computer selects more difficult question. If you do it right, it selects even more difficult question. It's not about more points, it's about like what is the level of difficulty that is like.
Probably each question has its own weight. So
yeah, it's not about weight, it's the measure of difficulty. Like this, it's called discrimination power. So
well, each question falls into some category of complexity.
yeah, and when you stop doing it right, like on certain level of difficulty, you do exactly half of the question right and half of the questions wrong. And this is like your estimated level. It's just the logic behind it. So if you if you fluctuate, if you can like do more difficult questions right but easier questions wrong, computer has to think more about what is the level, so your series of questions will be longer. It means that everybody has like the series of questions in TOEFL. It's different. Some people they make it faster. For some people it takes longer. It's just because if you are like constantly doing your questions right, so computer can decide what is the level quickly. But if you do some unexpected things, like answering the easier questions wrong, but doing more difficult questions right, which is kind of strange, so computer has to give more questions to you in order to understand what is your ability. Yeah, but you don't have to think about it. And in TOEFL they say that, for example, in some part you will have 3 problem sets, but you just sit on the computer and you see that you have 4 problem sets instead of 3. It means that one of those problem sets is just in development. They don't score you for this problem set, but you don't know which one of them. So you have to do every one as if it was a real test, but you will be scored only for some of them.
What is the problem set?
Like, I mean, in reading you have like 3 sets of questions for 3 texts, for example. Text 1 and set of questions, text 2 and set of questions, and text 3. And your training book said that in reading you will have only 3 texts, for example. I don't remember, but you will have 3. But when the time comes for the actual test, you have 4. And you don't know why, but it's because this 4th is just in development. They try to understand how people really perform on these problems. But you will never know which one is in development, so you have to do all 4 of them. But only you will be scored, you will be assessed only on 3, and the 4th will be just to understand how good it is, how good is the problem set. But you never know which one, so you have to do all of them. Sometimes it happens. Like you get more things to do because they have to build new tests.
10 more questions for speaking.
Yeah, 10 more questions for speaking. Any other questions? Okay, so good luck for those who are going to take the tests, and thank you for your attention.
You have got
Yeah.